Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cherry the Geek TV. I'm Joe Vanourney. Today we are joined by David Bushell. He's a movie producer whose credits include Sling Blade and Dallas Buyers Club and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And he can now add the credit of film director to his resume. His new documentary, Cheech Chong's Last Movie, is now available to stream on VOD platforms everywhere. David Bushell, welcome to Cherry the Geek TV.
Hello, Joe, and hello, Cherry the Geek TV. Happy to be here.
First of all, let me start off by telling you it's a wonderful documentary. I've seen it twice now. First time
Nice.
was in a full packed theater at 4:20 p.m. on April 20th. What a better way to see a Cheech and Chong movie than on 4:20 on 4:20. And I was with my 18-year-old son who was completely unfamiliar with Cheech and Chong. He loved it as well. Watched it again over the weekend. It's an amazing documentary. Let's dive into it. First off,
Joe, thank you
yes,
for seeing it in the theaters,
yes, and
and
it's
thanks for
like
seeing it
this,
on Fourth.
full house.
And it,
Everybody
and
loved it.
and I love that it's multi-generational. So the fact that the kids dug it and didn't kind of yell at you, Dad, why'd you take me here? That's a good sign.
Yeah, he really enjoyed it. Talk to me about how this film kind of started. It's my understanding that it was originally going to be a Cheech and Chong reunion film that kind of fell apart, and then it evolved into this documentary. Kind of
Yeah,
walk me through that process. How
just I was called to do a Cheech and Chong reunion film. I don't know how many years ago, but it's many. It has to be over 15 or so at this point. And when that didn't happen and Tommy went to prison, we tried to kind of keep the film together, and that's where I met Robbie Chong, Tommy's daughter, my producing partner on the film, who was instrumental in getting the guys talking and stuff after the breakup and whatnot. So when that film didn't happen, I said nobody's made the definitive Cheech and Chong documentary, and this was a bit before the gold rush of documentaries. So we talked about it for a couple of years, and finally, I had another project that I had co-wrote and had my eyes on to direct, and and when that one wasn't taking flight, we said, let's do this, and we talked to the guys, and they were game, and we set sail.
uh, when was your first time? Do you remember how old you were when you discovered Cheech and Chong?
I
What
have a
what was their was it a film? Was it a comedy bit? How did you discover them?
well, I have an older brother and an older sister. My brother's 5 years older, my sister's 7 years older. So I grew up around a lot of the music and the comedy at that time. And I had a childhood friend who, when cable just came on, and I want to. I've been trying to figure out if it was an album bit like Dave's Not Here, or if it was around the Up in Smoke time. But I remember Up in Smoke, but I am trying. But there's something about the albums that I would have been around as well. I was just, I'm a little bit younger. Well, not anymore, but I was.
Do you remember specifically something that what was it about them that resonated with you? Was there anything in particular?
Just they they were funny, really funny.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I'm young, so you're just looking at these characters, and they're just wild and outrageous and hilarious. So it wasn't, some profound, crazy fan moment. I admire the funny, and I admire talent, and they've kind of got, you know, buttloads of both.
When you met them years later, when was the first time you met them? Was it in preparation for this reunion film?
So a funny story is one of my first job as a PA when I moved to Los Angeles from New York was Cheech had just done Born in East LA, or not just done, it was a few years after, but he was hired to shoot a Chevy commercial. And I was a PA and he was the director. And then I met them 25 years later or whatever it was, 30 years later. Many years later, probably 20 years later. But we met um, for the reunion film. And when that didn't happen, as I said, we Robbie and I, I said, hey, like maybe we should make a documentary because Tommy went to prison and you know it just wasn't happening. And we talked about it for a bit and then returned to the doc because I was hungry to direct something and wanted to do something a little bit more expansive and dynamic than a conventional doc. I grew up on, narrative movie stuff, always watched a lot of nonfiction, but wanted to kind of push the boundaries on the genre, or attempt to at least, because I just feel like in certain instances there's a lot of great, well-made documentaries, but there's also a lot of great stories that aren't greatly told. There's a lot of contrivance and exposition, see and say, people sitting on couches talking about the old days, cutting to archival, and I felt that the guys are alive and well. Um, they still got it, and maybe we could get them to play a little bit more than just when you sit down for a few hours of interviews, and they went for it.
So your film, the film that you made, the documentary, it's kind of broken into four tracks, right? Four different segments. There's the archival footage, there's the sit down interviews with them separately. Uh, there's animation, there's a bunch of little animated segments. And then there's this semi-scripted road trip through the desert where they're talking to each other like the old days. So I want to talk about each of these different tracks
Sure,
separately. Let's start
sure.
with the archival footage. How long did it take you to find this
You,
footage?
yeah.
What was that process like? Uh, and how long did it take?
I love that you know the movie and that you can talk about the movie and you actually bring up the different uh, um, chunks in the order, right? So we raised a bit of money to acquire the archival to see what we have, right? So that process is ongoing. And it's a combination of being like a truffle hunter and, looking for lost treasure. So there's what I call the layups, foul shots, and three pointers in terms of acquiring the archival, and that took a while. But the lion's share, um, and I don't even remember what that, but you'll get 75%, and then you'll run into somebody or someone will say, "Hey, I found this." But for the most part, that was the point of entry, and then from there we shot the portrait interviews of them individually, which are kind of like testimony to lay down the story that I always knew I wanted to use, but I also knew that it was going to inform me beyond. I wasn't going to use the 30 hours of footage because I wanted to do something uh, that had that was visually more than just interviews and clips. So I hooked up with this amazing animator, James Blagden, who I guess is most known for this animated short on Doc Ellis, pitcher for the Pirates in the '70s, who pitched a no-hitter on acid, and it's a great. He's done a lot of other stuff, but that when I saw that piece, I was like, this is the right guy. He had just moved to California from Brooklyn, and we struck up a friendship because there's a lot of parts of the movie that were either told in the white psych or just when they first met. We don't have pictures, we don't have footage of that, so it just felt way expositional for them to just be telling us the story as opposed to trying to bring it to life with the animation. And then kind of for me the golden ticket was getting the guys together in the classic two shot in a car, driving the desert road, which is another thread that we could kind of weave in and out of because as I learned, making documentaries is all about transitions. How do we get from the past to the present? How do we get from this type of footage to this type of footage without it feeling clumsy or contrived? And I always dreamed that, if it felt like we could get caught in like a 15, 20 minute Cheech and Chong movie amongst hearing their wildly empathetic story, that would be a way to push on the genre and hopefully be really fun and exciting for an audience.
For that road trip segment, how much of that was scripted? How much of that was improvised?
All unscripted.
It's all unscripted. I
They
mean,
have no, they have no,
I mean, but they're meeting people. I mean, some of it's scripted in the sense that
well,
they're picking up people. They're talking about
well,
the wife, and then the wife's hitchhiking, or standing on the side of the road. I mean, so there's a
well,
semi script.
I knew how to build it, but in terms of writing it, other than framing out the different pieces, uh, it was like lighting a pack of firecrackers and running.
Gotcha.
They didn't know a lot. They most certainly didn't know, how it was being built. I mean, I shared with them as we cut things together, pieces, so that they could feel confident that this wasn't just going to be a waste of time or, a train wreck. But they were, and their whole thing is improvisation. Uh, and you know, it wasn't heavily, it was unscripted.
Gotcha. When you're putting together the archival footage, how do you go about deciding what you're going to use, what you're going to leave out? Was there a holy grail piece of footage that you were like, oh my God, we got to get this, or we know this exists, but was hard to track down? And was there something that what you wanted to include, but you had to cut because maybe
We
for time
no,
purposes or
we did. I mean, look, there's, Tommy working out with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was great, but it took the point of view about their health and fitness kind of somewhere else. So that was a little bit of what do they call it? Killing babies, you know? But you can't really say that. That doesn't sound too good. So, so, but we have a couple of hero interviews. There's a Playboy interview that we kind of come back and forth. That's somewhat informational, but you're capturing them at, a prime time. And then Geraldo did a bunch of stuff with them. So those two were kind of hero uh, archival interviews that, we are using you just keep distilling it down, and it's a collage or a puzzle that you're building. And then of course you find, I was trying to get um, any outtakes from After Hours with Scorsese, and everybody was cooperative and it was really great, but there was nothing there. They went into the vaults, and you're waiting and you're hoping that something's gonna, you know, and then the flip side to that is, you're looking for other material and you get a phone call and they're like, we found it. Or here's specifically that Geraldo piece. It played on like 48 hours. It was 6 minutes long in 1980. And when they went to go get the tape, below it, there was a cardboard box of like 4 hours of all the raw material because Geraldo had gone to Canada with them. He was in Hollywood with them. And we were able to kind of rake through all that stuff. And again, just distill it down and see how it serves. But it's just this constant refinement and asking yourself, how does this serve the story? Why does it deserve to be in the movie? Is it pushing the narrative forward? Is it funny? Does it feel real? All those questions.
one of the things revealed in the movie is that Tommy Chong always wanted to be in control, right? When even if another director was making the movie that they were in, he wanted his say. And that's one of the reasons that they broke up as well. Cheech wanted to contribute more to the act and to the process, and Tommy was always taking control. Knowing that about them going in, how was the experience of working with Tommy, directing him in this documentary? Has he mellowed out in his older
He
age, or
he was sorry.
was he still wanting to be in control?
Um, he was great. and he was generous. He was patient. Um, he's 8 years older than Cheech. So there's that younger brother, older brother dynamic. He had a successful recording, ran the club. So he's used to assuming that role. And Cheech acknowledges that. But at a certain point, as the movie says, the younger brother got old enough. So what is really rewarding is that both of them love the movie. And you know, with Tommy, it's like getting in the lion's den, man. You got to be a lion tamer, and that's not just Tommy Chong or Cheech. That's dealing with real talent. So I feel relieved and lucky that they trusted me, and most importantly, that they love the movie. You know, so hopefully that answers it.
As
There's
you've
no
gotten
real
to
dirt.
as you've gotten to know them, what's one thing about each of them that about their personalities that you envisioned, like this is exactly how I envisioned that they'd be, and this is true. And what about their personalities surprised you? Like maybe they're
Yeah, I
different
mean,
than how you went in.
well, how much more they clearly are than their characters, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that yin yang aspect of their personality that's so obvious when I'll say it right now, which is, Cheech needs to know and Tommy doesn't want to know. It's that yin yang thing that works really well. Uh, but I don't know that there's one thing as much as it's just this like process of discovery. Um, you know, Knowing that Tommy's been um, to a certain extent in control a lot, and Cheech is in control as well. I mean, it's in the movie at a certain point, but in the beginning, when they talk about the record years and everything like that, that's cool. And there's a truth to that counterbalance. When Tommy starts to direct the movies, things changed. The dynamic changed. But I always say, if they just conquered stand up and records and didn't have a career in movies, it's still a hell of a career. The fact that they went off and made a bunch of movies that were successful on top of it is incredible. And, any 50-year union, uh, and that's where I think the story is really empathetic because it's a love story at its core about these two guys and but you can it could be about a brother and a sister or a business partner or a husband and wife or a wife and wife or a husband and husband. It could be uh, um, and then you're reminded that these guys are, oh yeah, I can relate to their story and some of the trials and tribulations, but also they're these kind of comedic icons that are so much more than the average everyday person in terms of what they've lived and how they've chosen to spend their life,
So this was your first film as a director. Uh, what would you say was the biggest challenge making the film going in, and what was maybe the biggest pleasant surprise? Something you thought might go awry that you were like pleasantly surprised. Oh, this went well.
uh, I mean, getting the money and shooting the desert was really challenging because for the genre, it's like, well, why don't you just shoot people on? That's going to be expensive. What if it doesn't work? All these reasons not to take risk, whether it's creative risk or financial risk. When I knew right away, I was like, getting these guys, getting these portrait interviews for them to kind of air, give me the lowdown, which I'll use a bunch of it, but to get them together, it's just like them being on a couch, but they're not on a couch. So how do we make it a bit more theatrical and give it scope and feel like a movie while also that movement, it's it gives you and then of course the heat. It was pretty pretty damn hot out there. But and that would be the hardest thing. I guess the surprise was uh well, how much the business has changed and continues to change quickly. Um, whether it's, the pandemic, the strikes, the viewer habits, everything, the baby boomers not really going out as much to the theaters, which I don't know how old you are, but like the $6 Million Man when I was growing up, I mean, you couldn't get better than Lee Majors and Charlie's Angels and all that stuff. And I guess that's the wrong thing to point out because that does exist. That was TV, and I'm just keying in on your background. But um, I grew up going to the movies, and that's that's what I love. And I find myself going to the movies less, and it's a bummer. It's a real bummer. I mean, here we are doing a Zoom where normally we would get together and feel each other, and not that we're not having a great time, but there's something different. And I don't know that you know, and I'm just rambling on. I hope this is okay.
Oh,
Just
you're fine.
that's surprising that I wanted to make a theatrical documentary. And, I always knew it would live 95% of its life on these streaming platforms. But, and we did have a nice, short run in the theaters, and I'm so grateful that you went, right?
Mhm.
Um, but that's what I wanted. I wanted you to take your son and turn him on and him come out of it and say, Dad, that was fun. Like, not you wasted your time. And I hope that at least at home, fathers and sons and families will be able to turn on this time capsule of where, American music and movies and literature. I mean, it's one of the big reasons it's one of the big reasons why America was so cool, but at that time was so cool, was all that culture that was coming out.
Well, it's a wonderful film. It's called Cheech and Chong's Last Movie, now available to stream everywhere on all the VOD platforms. David, thank you so much for chatting with us today on Cherry.
Thanks so much, Joe. I really appreciate this.